I might not. Okay, good. It's recording. Hi, everybody. Um, Dawn Ketzel is here. So I'm blind, and I'm just gonna let you know that this is gonna be hard. I've got two screens going. I'm gonna be listening to it and then talking. There may be some moments. Of course, I'm going to be like ad-libbing my own information, but I still need to be prompted from my screen reader, which may be a bit confusing. So please bear with me. I've never done it this way before. I usually do um, speaker notes. So let's just jump right in. So this will be discussion number 2. In family systems theory, the therapist is not only looking at the individual person in isolation. Oh, let me go back. Let me see if it's good. Okay. Well, it looks like I'm going to have to read it. It's going to be a little difficult. Okay. So in family systems, we're not looking at the minutia of events that happen with our clients. We're looking at the depth or the breadth of it. We want to understand between the give and take or the ebb and flow of the relationship, what individual responsibility lies, right? So that's ultimately how I see systems presenting in marriage and family therapy. We're not just trying to locate a problem inside like an identified patient. Instead, the therapist is looking at the relationship as a whole system. I think of it almost like watching the gears of a bicycle turn together with the wheel. Bike only moves forward because the parts are working together. In a similar way, family members operate within a system, and each person's behavior affects the movement of the whole family. However, these systems are not always healthy. Sometimes families maintain very unhealthy patterns because those patterns are familiar, predictable, and have helped the family survive in some way to function where they've come to their family therapy. They know that there's issues, but to date these negative or positive affects are a part of their unit. They're a part of what we would call safety net, established pattern of behavior, which is why we carry that with us when we get older. And that's why as clinicians we truly need to consider all of those aspects of maturation and how they affect the individual as they go into new and very differing relationships. I think it's been said that the hardest thing for two people to do in the world is grow up in different homes, different households, and come together, right? Just because something is adaptive does not always mean it is healthy. That is something therapists need to be mindful of when working with families. My first concept I want to discuss is homeostasis. Equilibrium is one of my favorite words, and it's a wonderful movie. However, in my own words, homeostasis means that a family system tends to maintain or protect what has worked for them in the past, whether that pattern is protective or negative or positive or negative. The family is used to this certain dynamic. They're used to um, the communication styles and the lack of it, possibly. They're used to avoidance, or some families have enmeshment and hypervigilance, and those things can also be very, very problematic. So when one person changes the dynamic, the whole system may react. They may pull things back uh, to where they're used to it being at this point. And that may be also very negative or positive. The effect of first order change is sometimes what we call an extinction burst, and that can be daunting, to say the least, because we definitely want to maintain um, eruption and, or we want to avoid eruption, and we want to maintain exploration into these new patterns and these new systems. It is so difficult to change some of these really negative embedded dynamics and systems that families can have. We still, they may still be bound to these patterns, roles, or even small events that have happened earlier in life. Those experiences may continue shaping how the family responds to negative, positive, um, bids for affection, things like that. But the attempts to sway the partner or other family members into either healthy or unhealthy dynamics, because it can go either way, especially when we're talking about like the initial first order changes. My second concept is going to be cybernetics. I created an associative mnemonic for this one. The word cybernetic reminds me of, obviously, like cybernet, the internet, like online systems, wires, signals, and messages traveling through a network. That helps me remember that cybernetics in family systems is about feedback loops. And that could be a negative or positive feedback loop. Again, these theories, they complement each other, because when we have these feedback loops, that could be one of these negative aspects we were talking about earlier, or even positive, just the system and the events that they are used to participating in. Routines. What helps you remember that cybernetics and family systems is about feedback loops is how messages or behaviors move through a rational system. One person sends a message through words, tone, body language, or behavior, and another person responds. That response then becomes feedback that affects the first person. Just like signals travel through a network, communications and emotional energy through a family system. The third concept is family roles. Family roles are repeated positions people take within the family system. I'm a middle child. Um, I think I have that like very typical, atypical middle child syndrome. But I was also a scapegoat in my family system. And um, at times I was also a golden child. It was very odd the way that those dichotomies can shift within a family dynamic as well. So roles are important, but they're not necessarily fixed. I think that that is something we need to be aware of as well. Family roles are repeated positions people take within the family system, and many times those roles are not roles they ask for. We may see roles such as the golden child, the scapegoat, the identified patient, the caretaker. the hero, or the lost child. These roles can help the family function in short terms, but they can also trap people in narrow identities. For example, the hero child may look successful on the outside, but feel intense pressure to perform and may not feel allowed to struggle at all. The overachiever or golden child may feel the same pressure. Other siblings also feel inadequate in comparison, even if they appear to be functioning well in other areas of life. Really reminds me of one of the dyads that we had. I believe it might have been psychopathology, might have been. Um, but that was the family dynamic. One of the children was struggling because they were like amazing in their academic achievements and other sports and extracurricular activities that they were just doing wonderful in. However, because their sister had been put into the role of the golden child, they ended up feeling completely inadequate and inferior. And they felt like their parents were diminishing their accomplishments in place of their sister. It was like Deontay, Devon, it was all the 3Ds. If you guys remember that class, it was pretty cool. But that's what that brings to me. The fourth concept is family patterns. Family patterns are the repeated ways people interact with each other over time. A family therapist tries to identify these cycles rather than blaming one person for the entire problem. For example, one person may pursue a conversation while another withdraws. The more one person pursues, the more the other withdraws, and the more the other withdraws, the more the first person pursues. The problem is not only inside one person. The problem is maintained by the repeated interaction between them both. For instance, my son, we took his friend with us to the water park, and they have a wonderful relationship. They know that they're best friends. They love each other so much, but um, they're constantly picking on each other. They're constantly hitting each other. They are, for lack of a better term, torturing each other like siblings. I had to have a conversation with Aiden, who's 13. He is so much older. And it was really funny and cute at the same time because my son on the spectrum, Aiden's undiagnosed, but very likely on the spectrum. His uncle is nonverbal. So, but and his mom thinks that he might be as well. So it's not, I'm not saying that of my own volition, but he's a big boy. And like, so, I mean, he can really thump my son. My son's 9 and he's 13. My son grabbed something out of his hand and he tried to rip it back and he ended up hurting him. And this happens quite a bit between the two of them. Aiden knows his size and he does know he's a big boy. I mean, he is a big boy for 13. Um, he's not, he's taller than me, but he's not like 6 feet or anything, but he's also, heavy, not that, just a big guy. Everyone was really trying to get him to play football, but he has a very hard time owning what he's doing. Even his dad has brought it up to him, said, "Look, Aiden, Miss Dawn is taking you to go do these things, and you need to be mindful. If she says you're doing something, you should say thank you," which is the same thing we're doing with my son. A few times now, when he was, even when his dad said it, like he was confronted with this behavior, he had a complete meltdown. He started punching himself both times. Um, and we had to sit down and we had to talk about it. And we separated the two of them and everything. Thankfully, I was with the ABA specialist when we were at the water park. So it was really nice to have that extra help. Um, but I was trying to explain it to Aiden and I'm like, don't you see like your role in this? And I'm trying to get him to understand that even though my son had taken it or tried to take something out of his hand, when he did what he did, he hurt him while he didn't mean to do it. And it was an accident. He does understand his size and he does understand that if the role was reversed, that he would be upset if, someone had accidentally hurt him, even if he was the one that had tried to take it out of the other person's hand. We went back and forth for a few minutes and he agreed that he would absolutely want, you know, someone to apologize to him if that happened to him. But then he also couldn't understand why he needed to apologize to my son because he didn't mean to do it. So that really just brings me back to like roles and just like the level of offense that we can have. And how like we'll say, oh, it's nobody can push my buttons like that person, and it's true. And that's why it's so important for us to really identify and dig deep and try and figure out what it is within those moments that we're doing or feeling or thinking so that we can avoid in the future, reliving those unhealthy patterns. So the problem is not only inside one person, the problem is maintained by the repeated interaction between them, like we said. Okay, so my fifth concept is going to be first order change. First order change, as we've discussed over a few of these different examples, means that we're going to change the most basic tenet of the interactive process. So we're going to change behavior or changing surface behavior, getting people to start thinking about things just a little bit differently. It means we're not going to change the entire dynamic of the system, right? But we are going to maybe start to get people to say, like, when somebody rips something out of my hand and I don't like it, I might not